It's the 15 Canadian artists that owned Canada in 1974. I'm John Bowden. This is Rock History Canada. Before we start, remember to subscribe to our channel, share our videos, comment on them, and like them as well. And of course, you can always make a donation to the channel. There's a PayPal link in the description of all our videos. You can join our Patreon. You'll get early access to our videos, or buy Rock History Canada, Rock History Book, or Rock History Music swag at our swag store. The link is right in the top of the description. And before we start, honorable mentions to Steppenwolf. They almost made the top 15. They were a huge band, and between 74 and 76, they launched another comeback, which resulted in their last top 40 hit, Straight Shootin' Woman, and the album's Slow Flux. Number 15, Chillak, a Canadian rock band formed in the early 1970s. In 1974, the band released Riding High. That lineup was their longtime leader, Bill Henderson, on guitar and lead vocals, Glenn Miller on bass, Ross Turney on drums, and Howard Froese on guitars. Leading up to 1974, Chillak had a number 10 album in 1971, their self-titled album. Riding High reached number 63 on the Canadian charts. But in 1974, Chillak had two hits, Groundhog from All Over You, and a top 10 hit with Crazy Talk. Number 14, Marie McLaughlin. His 1974 album was Sweeping the Spotlight Away, which reached number 34 on the Canadian charts. And he had two hits that year. One from an album that was released in 73, Day to Day Dust with Linda, Won't You Take Me In? Then Shoeshine, Working Song from Sweeping the Spotlight Away. The next year, he would have his first and only number one hit, Down by the Henry Moore. In the coming years, there would be other big hits like On the Boulevard, Whispering Rain, and Railroad Man. And lucky number 13, Andy Kim, who had one of the biggest hits in the land with Rock Me Gently in 1974. Leading up to that year, he had quite a few hits. In 68, How'd We Ever Get This Way? Shoot 'Em Up Baby, Baby I Love You, and So Good Together, and Be My Baby. Some of those songs were done in the famous Brill Building in New York City, where a lot of other superstars got their popularity. Paul Simon, Carole King. Rock Me Gently was a number one hit in several countries. It was number one in the US and in Canada. Andy Kim is well known for his philanthropic concerts every Christmas, raising funds for special charities. Number 12, Lighthouse. A band formed in 1969 in Toronto. They won Juno Awards for Best Canadian Group of the Year in 72, 73, and 74. And they had a good year in 74. They had 4 singles that year, but only one became a hit, Can You Feel It? Peaking at number 19 on the Canadian charts. It was from the album of the same name. They actually charted 3 albums in 1974, Can You Feel It, Good Day, and The Best of Lighthouse, where they released the old Bird song 8 Miles High. The 2 main members were always the 2 lead singers, Bob McBride and Skip Prokop. We lost both of them. McBride died at the age of 51 in February of 1998. After he left Lighthouse, he suffered from diabetes, hepatitis B, and the cause of his death was heart failure. Skip Prokop was the drummer and singer. He was also the band leader of Lighthouse. He co-founded the band in the late 60s with Paul Halford. Prokop died at the age of 73 in 2017. Number 11, April Wine. Here's a band that would go on to have a bigger year after year. They peaked in the early 80s with their Nature of the Beast album, which was also a hit in the US. Actually, their first US hit was You Could Have Been a Lady, a cover of Hot Chocolate's song, way back in 1972. The band was formed with David and Richie Henman and their cousin Jim Henman, along with future leader Miles Goodwin. Goodwin would go on to be the driving force of April Wine. He died at the age of 75 in December of 2023. April Wine would have 4 singles in 1974, the first being the last single from their album Electric Jewels. It was the title song. I'm on Fire for You Baby followed, and then the first single from Stand Back, I Wouldn't Want to Lose Your Love. Number 10, the Stampeders, who had 3 hits in 1974. Running Wild, which peaked at number 18, Me and My Stone, a number 27 hit, and Ramona, which peaked at number 18. The latter was from their album New Day, and the other 2 were from the album From the Fire. In 74, the Stampeders were one of those bands like April Wine that toured everywhere. If there was an arena in your town, and if you're Canadian, you know there was an arena. All these great Canadian bands came to see you. The Stampeders were Rich Dotson, Ronnie King, who we recently lost, and Kim Burley. They were formed in 1964, and their first big claim to fame was Sweet City Woman, a hit in both Canada and the US. Number 9, Canada's first teen idol, Paul Anka. Who could forget You're Having My Baby in 1974? To some, it was a cringe-worthy song. By the 80s, some radio stations stopped playing it, but that's changed now. His album in 74 was simply titled Anka. In 1974, he also had the single Let Me Get to Know You, which was a number 13 hit in Canada. He followed that up with You're Having My Baby, featuring Odia Coates, that reached number 1 in several countries. And Coates was also on One Man Woman, One Woman Man, a number 7 hit in the US, number 4 in Canada. We'd be remiss if we didn't mention at least some of Paul Anka's past. It all started in 1957 with Diana. It reached number 2 on the charts. Now, we're not going to give you all the chart positions for these songs since there's so many. How about some top 10s? You Are My Destiny in 1958. Lonely Boy, a number 1 hit. In 59, also that year, Put Your Head on My Shoulder, and It's Time to Cry. In 1960, there was Puppy Love, My Hometown. And he didn't have a top 10 hit till 1974 after that, with You're Having My Baby. He's had a long career. Number 8, Rush. 1974 saw the band really start as a recording band, with their debut featuring a drummer that only lasted one album. He had to leave because of health problems, John Rutsey. The 2 singles, Finding My Way and In the Mood. Also in Rush, of course, Geddy Lee and Alex Lifeson. Number 7, The Guess Who. 1974 had the Guess Who release 2 albums, Road Food and Flavors. The former, Road Food, was the last album to feature guitarist Kurt Winter and Donnie McDougall. Winter died in 1997 at the age of 51. A lot of his health problems were attributed to his heavy drinking, and ultimately he died of kidney failure. In 1974, well, let's start with Road Food. Road Food had 2 hits, Star Baby and Clap for the Wolfman, featuring, of course, Wolfman Jack. The album Flavors, their second from 74, had the hits Dancing Fool and Loves Me Like a Brother, and featured new guitarist Dominic Troiano, who was also on their follow-up Power in the Music before things started to crumble in the Guess Who, and Burton Cummings went solo. The group is well known for being rock royalty in Canada, going way back to their Chad Allen days. He was their original singer, the guy who was featured on Shakin' All Over back in 1965. With a new lead singer, things really started to pop in 1969 with Burton Cummings singing These Eyes, Laughing, Undone, No Time. By 1970, there was American Woman, No Sugar Tonight, Hand Me Down World, and Share the Land. Number 6, Terry Jacks. Now, Terry is not known for album sales, but in 1974, he had the biggest hit in the world, not just Canada, with his version of Seasons in the Sun. It's a tune that was originally intended for the Beach Boys with Terry Jacks producing, but they turned it down, and he thought he'd take a stab at it. It became the largest selling international single by a Canadian artist at that time, going on to sell 14 million copies worldwide. It earned the singer 2 Juno Awards, became the biggest selling Canadian single of all time. The song is based on Rod McEwen's 1965 rewrite of Le Moribond, originally by Belgian singer Jacques Brel. The album was called Seasons in the Sun and featured Concrete Sea, I'm Gonna Love You Too, If You Go Away, and Rock and Roll, I Gave You the Best Years of My Life. The album went gold, but when considering how big the single was, and there's no one who was living in 74 who didn't hear Seasons in the Sun, whether you were in Canada or any other country in the world. But the album only went gold. Before being a solo artist, Terry Jacks was part of the Pompey family with his then partner, Susan Jacks, who we just lost in 2022 at the age of 73. They had a lot of Canadian hits. Which Way You Going, Billy? That's Where I Went Wrong, Shadows on My Wall, I Was Wondering, Where Evil Grows, I'll See You There, and Good Friends. Number 5, Neil Young. 74 was the year that a lot of his back catalog and the folks who were living under a rock finally discovered Neil Young. The album was On the Beach, Walk On was the single, of course, a former member of Buffalo Springfield, and Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young. He scored hits like Cinnamon Girl, Only Love Can Break Your Heart, his #1 hit, Heart of Gold. And then there was Old Man, both from his critically acclaimed album, Harvest. Neil Young's always been a rock and roll chameleon, swimming in a few different genres through the years. #4, Anne Murray. She had 3 hits in 1974, You Won't See Me, Just One Look, and her version of the Beatles' Day Tripper. She charted 3 albums in 1974, Love Song, the compilation Country, and Highly Prized Possession. There were a lot of hits leading up to 1974. Let's just talk about some of the #1s. On the country chart, Snowbird reached the top, as well as Sing High, Sing Low, A Stranger in My Place, It Takes Time, Talk It Over in the Morning, Cotton Jenny, Danny's Song, What About Me, and A Love Song. #3, Joanie Mitchell. 1974 was easily one of her biggest years, with 2 charting albums, Court and Spark, arguably one of her best, and the live album, Miles of Isles. And here were the hits, Raised on Robbery, Help Me, and Free Man in Paris from Court and Spark, and she had 2 singles from Miles of Isles. New version, a live version of Big Yellow Taxi, and Carrie. If you're going to talk rock and roll royalty in Canada, and really pretty much anywhere else, Joanie Mitchell will always come up. Her album Blue is considered one of the greatest albums of all time. You Turn Me On, I'm a Radio from '72, an unbelievable artist. #2, Gordon Lightfoot. Like Joanie Mitchell, 1974 was a great year for Lightfoot. He had 2 monumental hits. First, Carefree Highway, which peaked at #11, and arguably one of the best songs of his career, Sundown, which peaked at #1. Both were from the album Sundown. His charting career started in 1962 with Remember Me, I'm the One. Other top 10 hits followed, like Just Like Tom Thumb's Blues, Spin Spin, Me and Bobby McGee, If You Could Read My Mind, Beautiful, and You Are What I Am. Gordon Lightfoot died on May 1st, 2023. He was 84. And #1, Bachman-Turner Overdrive. They were easily the biggest band in the land in 1974. When you look at top Canadian singles of '74, they had 3 of the top 10. You Ain't Seen Nothing Yet was #4 at the year-end countdown. Taking Care of Business, #46, and Let It Ride, #57. They charted 2 albums in 1974, Bachman-Turner Overdrive 2 and Not Fragile, arguably their best album. You Ain't Seen Nothing Yet, by the way, was #1 in dozens of countries, including Canada and the US. The Not Fragile album included the classic version of BTO. Randy Bachman on vocals and guitar, Blair Thornton on guitar, C.F. Turner, aka Fred Turner, on vocals and bass, and Robbie Bachman on drums. There you have it, the biggest bands in the land in Canada in 1974. What year would you like us to cover? Let us know, and remember, if you want to donate to the channel, we say that because YouTube is a tough gig, especially lately. We have a donation button on PayPal if you want to help us out. Also, join our Patreon, you'll get early access to all our videos. And we have a swag store with t-shirts and caps and coats for Rock History Canada, this channel, Rock History Book, and Rock History Music, our big channel, which is way above 100,000 subscribers. Comment on our videos, subscribe to our channel, share our videos, and like them. I'm John Bowden. This is Rock History Canada.